is Francis.
And I'm Nubia.
And today we have a really interesting story for you guys, a really interesting guest. We are chatting with Florence Wetzel. She's the author of several novels. Florence decided to move to Sweden so that she can write her novel, The Grand Man, a Scandinavian thriller. So Florence actually lives 3 months on, 3 months off in Sweden. And she's a full-time location independent writer. So Florence, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I love what you guys do, and it's fun to be able to talk about this.
Thank you
this
very
lifestyle.
much. So, Francis, I love this lifestyle, right? 3 months on, 3 months off. Tell us a little bit about how this journey started.
It started innocently. I read Stieg Larsson's books, you know, the trilogy, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, etc.
I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Said I called you Francis.
I think she called you
instead of
Francis.
Florence?
You did, but it's my middle name is Francis, so I'm used to it. I didn't even hear it. Okay.
She's looking at me like, why are you? What are you looking at me for? She gives me these looks, and I'm just like, what?
Let's try that one more time. I'm sorry.
All right. Sorry. I see that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So, Florence, thank you so much for being with us today. So, I love this lifestyle, right? 3 months on, 3 months off. That's like everyone's, ideal journey. Tell us, how did this journey begin?
It began innocently through reading a book. I read Stieg Larsson's trilogy, you know, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, The Girl with the Hornet's Nest, and I just fell in love with Sweden. Like, I was living in Denver, Colorado at the time. And looking back, I think without knowing it, my life was like a little bit humdrum. You know, I was freelancing, I was working at home all the time, and I loved Denver, but I never quite got roots there. I'd only been living there about 4 years. And when I read these books, I don't know, it's like karma, it just clicked. So I started reading all the Scandinavian mysteries I could get my hands on. I used to go to the Denver Public Library, and I would look at the spines of the books, and if there was like an umlaut, you know, like a weird word, I'd be like, oh, I think that's like Swedish or Norwegian. Anyway, so I was reading a lot of those books and seeing a lot of films from Scandinavia too, a lot of crime films, which are really great. And then I was working on a novel then called Holy Denver, and when that novel was wrapping up, I thought, well, what am I going to do next? And this little voice popped up in my head, and it said, you should write a Swedish crime novel. And then the other voice popped up. I'm sure you guys know what this is. Like, you're crazy. You can't do that. You've never even been to Sweden. And I was like, yeah, that is kind of true. But the idea came to me, and I couldn't let it go. So I started researching the book. And, you know, I had an idea, and then I was like, okay, I need to go to Sweden. So my first trip to Sweden was January 2013. And I was only there for 3 weeks. So at that time, so from 2013 to 2017, then I moved to New Jersey. My dad died, and I was taking care of my mom, who was very elderly. So I went from like being a professional proofreader to being more or less my mom's personal assistant, which was actually fun, you know, going to Starbucks, you know, paying her bills and stuff. But it also gave me freedom. You know, in a way, maybe my independent location lifestyle started then because I was living in my mom's house. It was not my house. You know what I mean? It was like not, and I knew it wasn't going to be forever because my mom was 87. So for those 4 years, I went to Sweden 3 times a year, anywhere between like 3 weeks and 6 weeks. And then after my mom died and then, you know, emptying her house and sell it, I was like, oh, okay, now it's time. So, my goal is I would actually like to eventually live in Sweden full time. But I think, as you know, and probably your listeners know, you know, as an American in Europe, you can be here within the Schengen zone in Europe. You can be here 3 months, and then you have to be gone for 3 months and then come back. So that's how it started. So I've been doing the 3 months on and 3 months off now for, I guess, officially about 2 years.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. So let's take it back a little bit. Have you always been a
Sure.
traveler? Have you ever lived abroad, or is this kind of like relatively new thing for you?
My parents love to travel. My parents, and especially after all the kids were out not going to college, they traveled all over the world. They went to Africa many times. They went to China. They've been to Tahiti. And when we were growing up, they took us on a lot of trips. I remember, it wasn't their thing like to have a super nice car. Their thing was like to go on trips. And there's actually a famous story of my mom when my dad asked her to marry him and he wanted to get her a ring. She's like, forget the ring, let's take the money and go to Europe.
I love that.
Right?
That's awesome.
And my mom was really the one that got my dad traveling because my mom, she was born 1926. So after World War II was over, she actually went to Germany a few years after that by herself. I mean, she saw like war-torn Germany in the late 40s. So my mom was always had a travel bug, and she really instilled it in us as children. And so we went on trips that were more like, conventional going to the Caribbean or whatever. But we also we went to Egypt, we went to Greece, and went to Europe. And I think that's definitely when it started. In my 20s, I did some traveling on my own. I went to Russia actually for 10 days. I went to Russia when St. Petersburg was called Leningrad, and I went to Japan for 3 weeks. And then I actually did live abroad. I went to Greece on vacation and to Crete, and I met somebody, and I ended up moving there. So from 1990 to 1995, I lived in a tiny village in Crete with a fisherman.
Wait a minute.
So,
that's exciting.
I was going to say,
That's a
conversation
novel right
just got
there.
shifted.
Wait a minute. So you just met somebody and decided to stay.
Because that's like a fairy tale, right? That's every traveler's thought process when they're a single traveler. You're like, if I could just meet someone and
whisk away.
Just live here forever.
Right? And there's that movie Shirley Valentine. So that came out 20 years ago. People are like, you're like Shirley Valentine. But yeah, it just happened.
So
yeah.
I'm curious, what did your family think that you just kind of like, hey guys, not coming back, like, what was that like?
It's funny because I remember my parents, I just remember being in their backyard and them having this serious talk with me and me saying to them, but I'm like you think this is a weird thing to do, but you guys were the ones that took me traveling when I was young. And you travel all the time and go to all these countries that, I think they felt like Greece wasn't the safest country in the world. It's like, yeah, you're like camping in Africa. Don't, you know what I mean? And something happened in that conversation. They were like, oh, she's like us. It's just I took it a step further,
I can dig it. The thing about travel is it's so not planned. You can plan to be in a place and everything else goes not according to plan, right?
Exactly. Or when I first came to Sweden, that first trip, I thought, okay, I'll come here, I'll do my research, maybe I'll need to come back another time. I didn't know. I had no idea that it would lead to this, whatever it is, 7 years later, and here I am, and I'm taking Swedish classes, and you know what I mean? So I think there's this karma or this click, because I don't have Greek blood, I don't have Swedish blood, but it's my friend Eric, who I know you also interviewed, he said something about connecting with the energy of a place. I think that's what happens sometimes.
Now let me ask you a question about this whole 3 months on, 3 months off. And it's more about, do you have any issues getting in and out of the country? Because we lived in Thailand, right? And Thailand only gives you 30 days. So you can
wow.
Yeah. Unless you get a visa, then you can get a 60-day. Right?
Okay.
And there's other visas, of course, right? Like retirement visa, education visa, all these different ones. But as a tourist, you can only be there 30 days. Now, it used to be a little lax where you can go kind of in and out as long as you leave the country and come back. Now, it's you've been in and out too many times.
Right.
Does that happen to you in Europe when it comes to the 3 months on, 3 months off? Have they given you that side eye?
What you doing here?
I had an issue, which I'll tell you about. But I have to say, actually, with Sweden, I've never had a problem. When I come in, they're like, how long are you staying? And I just was like, it's no good to lie. Like this time I'm here, I say 90 days, but it's literally 80 days. I said, I'll be here 2.5 months. They were like, oh, okay, have fun, stamp. I was like, yeah. But what I should say is that I left, to make my story neater, I said the 3 months on and 3 months off. I actually decided when I first started doing this, I decided not to go back to the US for my 3 months off of Sweden. Instead, I went to Svalbard. Where is Svalbard? Svalbard is north of Norway. It's like where the polar bears live. There's like 2,000, 3,000 polar bears there. It's pitch dark for 6 months of the year. Anyway, but it is not in the Schengen zone. So I thought, rather than go back to America for my 3 months, let me go to this funky place, which sounds interesting. And also, there's a lot of Swedish people there, so I could continue working on my Swedish. Okay, so when I left Svalbard, and I flew to Oslo, and I had an issue. Oh my God, the flight was it got into Oslo at 5:30 in the morning. I was exhausted. And I don't know what it was. The woman at the passport thing, she gave me like the side eye, the stink eye. She looked at my passport and she was looking at me and she was like, and then she said, wait a second. And so she called somebody, and Norwegian is like Swedish, but not totally. So, like when you understand like 50%, it's almost worse than understanding nothing. And she was like, I've got this American here, and she's been in and out of Svalbard and Norway and Sweden, and I don't know what's going on with her. And I'm sitting there like, and then she said, okay, ma'am, what I need is for you to get out of line, and I'm going to have everybody else go through, and then my colleague is going to come and talk to you. And I was like, I have a friend who works for the United Nations. She's in Africa, and they did kidnap training with her. So she told me about this special kind of breathing, because I was so nervous. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was okay with my days, but it's called square breathing. You breathe in 4 times, you hold it 4 times, you breathe out 4 times, and you hold it 4 times. So I was like in the corner, everyone's like getting their passport stamped, and I was just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyway, finally everyone was gone, and they brought me back in, and the guy said to me, he's like, so like what's going on? And I was like, I like Sweden, and I just was in Svalbard for 3 months, like, what do you, I was like, I'm starting a language class tonight, like, I'm just, and he looked at the lady, and he was like, would you just stamp her thing? And she stamped it, but the look she gave me was like, I got my ass on.
She's like, I just love the place.
I know, it was just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing traveling so much? It was weird, because my days were fine. And she's like, when are you going back to the US? Like it was, so yeah, it was the first, it was the only time so far, and hopefully it won't happen again, where someone is like, you're weird because you travel a lot. I mean, have you guys had that?
I can honestly say I have not.
She travels
Okay.
with me, so.
I travel a lot, but I don't travel to the same country back and forth. Only
Okay.
when I lived in Thailand for those 2 years. And I was fortunate enough to get like under the radar, right? So
Okay.
I know a lot of my friends. I'm sorry, that's the dog.
That's all right.
Okay.
I know a lot of my friends just
Barks like crazy. Okay, I apologize. So me personally, no. I've been in and out of Thailand multiple times for the past 2 years. But that wasn't uncommon. It's just recently, after there was some shift in their political, reigns, that they started looking at Americans more and going,
Oh, okay.
nah.
Yeah.
You're doing this.
You've been here too
Wow.
long. So I was gone by then.
Okay.
So that worked out in my favor. But I could not imagine being asked to be pulled aside, because even though you don't do anything,
It's scary.
it's scary because you're in a foreign land, you don't speak their language, you don't know what's going on. And the unfortunate part is that a lot of these countries see us American women as mules, right? Because that was
really?
the history. Oh.
Oh no! Oh, I didn't know. I'm so naive.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Florence
especially
Wetzel,
if you
drum
travel
roll.
to other countries like Latin American countries and things like that. And I don't know if you ever
Okay.
watched. I think it was is it uh, what's that Geographic? Locked Up Abroad.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's
Oh
on National
no.
Geographic or not, but
I don't think so.
it was like this show, right? That showed people
Getting locked up abroad.
getting locked up abroad, and majority of them were Australians and Americans. And wow,
Okay.
it just puts this fear.
Yeah, I don't watch that
Wow.
show specifically for that. I don't watch anything that scares me.
Well, I mean,
I get
Florence likes like Scandinavian crime films.
True.
And I was living it, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, okay, so my passport expires in like 3 years, and I did some research. You don't have to wait till then. So I'm growing my hair out. My hair is brown in my passport. So I was like, when I go back to America in like 2 weeks, I'm actually going to get a new passport. I'm going to have a new picture. My hair's white. And I just thought, maybe and fair enough. My passport is, I'm sure your passport's too. It's not that it's a mess, but it's kind of like, wow. So I thought, let's just kind of start a clean slate, especially now, that there won't be as many stamps. I thought, let's just, with the hair, how I look, and yeah. I mean, that's not always the solution, but my recommendation to your listeners, though, when you're in that situation, it's them who have all the power, and just breathe. Just breathe, and you haven't done anything wrong, hopefully. And hopefully you're not a drug.
Hopefully you're not guilty already.
And just answer the questions that they ask you, not because, the tendency, and I had to stop this, is to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, just,
Yeah, especially as Americans, we're always used to fighting back in a sense. Like, well, wait a minute, because don't do any of that. You know what I mean?
No.
Play along and just take it easy.
Exactly. I agree with that. And the other tip that I have is, actually, well, here's the story. This is something that happened with my Schengen days, so my tip to the listeners is, there's the 90 days. Really, I would leave at day 82, 83, 84 max. It's really, really good to have a little bit of a margin because you don't know what's going to happen. And I had something that happened. It was actually the opposite problem. There was nobody to stamp my passport. Before I went to Svalbard, I was going to the Faroe Islands. So the Faroe Islands? Yeah, they're just like Svalbard is part of Norway, but not part of Schengen. It is the same thing with the Faroe Islands. It's part of Denmark, but it's not in Schengen. So when you go from Norway to Svalbard, they're very organized. They have like their stamps, and they have like a little special place you go, and they're like, you are now out of the Schengen zone. You're like, yeah. So when I was going to the Faroe Islands, I thought it was going to be the same thing. But I get to the airport and I'm like, okay, so where do I get stamped so I can show that I'm leaving the Schengen zone? And they're like, the Faroe Islands are in the Schengen zone. I'm like, no, they're not. I talked to 4 different people. I got 4 different answers. And finally, this woman said to me, when you get to Faroe Islands, there'll be someone at the airport and they'll stamp your passport. And I was like, okay. And then I got there and there was nobody. They're like, oh, but you came from a flight from a Schengen country. I'm like, yeah, but I am not from a Schengen country. So I was there for 6 days. And thank God I had left that margin because I couldn't prove that I was in the Schengen zone. Someone said, well, you can go to the police station. They're like, but it's closed. It was Christmas time. This is how safe the Faroe Islands were. They were like, it's closed. They're opening up 2 days after Christmas. So I went there and they were like, we're sorry, we can't do that. I mean, they were really nice. So that was really scary. But I'm really glad that I left that margin. So that's
so important.
That's
Don't
important for
ever
any
do it
country.
The day before, like you never know what's gonna happen. Flight delayed, like that actually happened to my son. So he flew into Thailand, and we had, I think it was like 2 days or something like that, and but the Thai police officer, I felt like they kind of jacked us up for a couple extra 100 baht, which is fine. I paid it. But I feel like he still had another 24 hours, but we were playing it a little too close. And that freaked me out. It freaked him out, especially his first time abroad. So that margin is so crucial.
Oh, yeah. I did that in Indonesia.
Oh, yeah, I
was
remember.
there.
This girl. I was like, what you trying to get locked up in Indonesia? And they don't play either.
It was like, you know, as much as you travel, you still make mistakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had got a flight that was like 12:30 a.m. But I didn't realize because it's already 12:30 a.m. it's the next day, right? For whatever reason. So
Right.
I'm heading to the airport at like, I don't know, 10 a.m., not realizing that it was 12:30 a.m., not 12:30 p.m. So I was already a day late.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
my flight had left earlier that morning, let's say 1 o'clock in the morning. I show up at like noon,
That's when
right?
you missed your flight, right?
I missed my
Yeah.
flight. I was a day after my visa was already expired because I stayed until 29 days.
Right.
So here I was.
About to get locked up abroad.
Oh, no.
I was like, she called me. I was like, oh my God. I was like,
I called her panicking because I've never been in immigration officers like office, right? And it's like 4 immigration officers, and they're just like, "You pay." Pay what? Like, why am I paying? I'm like, I missed my flight. They're like, you still in the country, you need to pay. If you don't pay, you need to go to the police station, and then we're charging you every day that you're here. And it was just, it was so much. It was a lot.
it's not
and
a
I
place
was
you want to
just
be in. It's not a situation you want to be in at all.
Yeah, and some countries are not lenient. They're just like,
Oh.
rules are rules.
That's
This is
it.
what you do. I don't care who you are.
Where are you from?
Right.
If
I
you
don't
got
want
an
to see your
American
little
passport.
crocodile tears. just, just pay us.
Exactly. And the thing about traveling in the Schengen zone is like it's on you. It's not like there's like this little like buzzer that goes off in your passport. You have to keep track of your days. They don't when you go in the country, they're not like remember or they tell you the exact day. You have to take care of that. So I had that happen once. It actually happened in Svalbard, and it was embarrassing because I've lived, in Sweden a lot. They do that thing with the numbers here, like 1 o'clock in America is like 13 here.
Yeah.
So,
Military time.
whatever I did, I ended up same thing. I go to the airport, and they're like, "Your flight left this morning." It was 2:45, and I was like,
Oh.
"Oh shoot!" It was 02:45, not 14:45.
I think trips me
So
up, man.
yeah, it was just so I had to buy another ticket and the whole thing, and I was there, and I was like, and the thing is, like, even at that point, it wasn't a numbers thing going on, but you just feel nervous. I had to spend like another $300. Another piece of advice, have mad money, have that emergency fund.
That's that travel tax.
You know what I mean? When you go to the airport, make sure your laptop is loaded. You've got same with your cell phone, because like suddenly they were like, we don't have a ticket office. You have to do it on your laptop. So I'm like in the corner. I've got my laptop on my suitcase, and I'm buying a ticket for the flight that everyone else is going on. I'm like, it was just nerve wracking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was not going to get booted out or anything, but it just was like,
Yeah, it's not worth the stress.
Well, you
levels.
could never. Well, I mean, that's a good point, right? Is that people usually put enough money for their trip. They budget for their trip. You have to have these like incidental costs just in case. I'm talking
Yeah.
about luggage fees
Oh my
because
God.
I mean some of these smaller airlines charge pretty good money for overweight
Overweight.
luggage. I know people who went to certain places in Thailand. The flight would be like $30, but their luggage would cost them $200-300.
wow,
And
right.
Indonesia's pretty much robbed me one time.
How much?
And I fought with them because I was being so petty, and I was so annoyed. But I think I paid like an extra $200. Mind you, it was the same suitcase. I didn't buy anything because I don't buy any souvenirs. The same amount of stuff that I came in the country with, and I'm leaving. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, where's your supervisor? Like none of that worked. I did the whole American thing, and that didn't work.
And that's what I mean. It's like the things you never think about. It's like I came
Right.
to this country with it. I can't leave the country with it. Or, it's just so many things. You just never know.
Right.
I'm curious, Florence, because we have this whole thing that we've been talking about lately, which is like travel insurance.
Okay, yeah.
Do you typically purchase travel insurance? Because we found that there have been quite a few stories of folks who haven't and then had major accidents abroad and got stuck there and had to either raise money to be able to leave the countries. What's your take on that?
I read that on your Facebook page, and I was like, yeah, that's my worst nightmare. I am a big believer in world nomads. They are the best. So I have at this point, I have my insurance in America, and I go to doctors there when I'm there. I take care of business. But world nomads is great because you can be like, I'm going to be there. You just give them the dates. It can be, it's up to a year actually. But you can do it as many times as you want. You can do it 3 weeks and then 3 months later, whatever. And it's not that expensive. And they cover it. They have like kind of a less expensive one and then a more expensive one. But even that one, I think it's worth it, especially the older I get. And also, I spent time, as I said, in Svalbard, which I'm sorry, it's like one of the most dangerous places in the world. Like people just like, you have to get helicopter out because you're stuck in the polar bear. Yeah, I mean, people get like attacked by polar bears, and like it happened. Was it 2 summers ago? I mean, it happens, Or just like it's so easy to break a leg, even if you're not going up a mountain because it's icy. Stuff happens, and I think especially the older I get, I'm 57, and but it doesn't matter. Like if you're 22 and you break your leg, you still need, So I'm a big believer in that, and I get that done. There's one thing I'm actually a little confused about. Okay, so there's travel insurance, which is like health insurance, but then there's travel insurance, which is like, I don't know, there's like a typhoon and your plane doesn't go and you have to stay over 5 nights and pay for a hotel. That's where I get a little confused.
That's more like airline insurance, right? Like
okay.
That's for your flight. So you're insuring that your flight,
okay.
If something happens. I always purchase airline insurance because it's very minimal and I change my mind a lot.
Right.
So
okay.
If you buy flight insurance and you're unable to take your flight for whatever reason, meaning you have an illness, in your area there's like really bad weather or conditions or some kind of like act of God, let's say you lose a relative or whatever the case may be, you can actually get all your money back from your flight.
Okay.
Where most times if you don't have that insurance, you just, you're
asked out.
You're asked out. That's your flight. You may be able to get points if you, depend on what airline it is. But most airlines are just like, well, I'm sorry. That was your responsibility to take the flight.
Some travel insurance includes that because I ended up not purchasing World Nomads and purchased Alliance, and it does cover some of that flight issue stuff. And it wasn't super expensive. It was actually so easy that I was like, is this thing gonna work? Like it was so easy to do it. So I definitely encourage people just get it. I went 3 years living abroad and I didn't do it, and I ended up having 2 motorbike accidents while living in Thailand. Granted, I was lucky, you know what I mean? But I'm just like, I think it's just worth it.
There's so many different options, right? Because as an American, we have credit cards. Right. And a lot of our credit cards cover certain travel incidences, especially like Chase or American Express. A lot of them have insurance. So they have insurance.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. So
you can actually use, different methods.
Yeah.
You just got to do your research.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. See what works for you and see what you might already have. But I'm with you guys 100%. I think you don't need it until you need it, and then you really need it. So it's good just to get it done. You just gotta factor that in your expenses. That's all.
So I'm curious, where are you from in the States?
So I grew up in Westfield, New Jersey, little suburb about 45 minutes from New York. Okay. And then I went to school in New York City. I lived most of my adult life in Hoboken, New Jersey, with that 5-year interval in Greece. And then I actually I lived like 7 years in upstate New York, the Woodstock area.
Love
And
the
then I
cold
lived
weather,
in
I was
Florence.
just
You
about to
love
say,
cold
that.
weather.
I'm wondering,
Absolutely.
I'm running away from it.
what in
I live
the
in
Oh my
Boston. And I'm
God.
like, bump this. I'm out
I
of
love
here.
cold weather. Right now in Sweden, it's so cold. And I'm like, yeah. And then I lived in Colorado. I know. Then I lived in Colorado for 4 years. So as things like that's when I started freelancing. And anyway, so that's where I grew up. So basically, I grew up in New Jersey, New York City area, and then an interval in Greece, also Colorado and upstate New York. So
okay. So
I've
I
been
mean,
moving around.
you're from the Northeast corridor, so you're familiar with the
Yeah.
winters. But I was
Yes.
just wondering, like, what was it about Sweden, right? These Scandinavian countries, don't get me wrong, they're absolutely gorgeous. One of my favorite places is Iceland. You
Oh,
know,
yeah. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But they're very cold, they're very expensive for food because the agriculture does not grow everything, so
Right.
the import is expensive. Why Sweden? Like, how did that? I know, I realize that you like the books. I love The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and all
Uh,
of the books. I've read all the series, but it didn't make me run to Sweden. Especially when you watch the movies and
Right.
everything is
Yeah.
so like gray and wet, and it's just like damp.
It is damn. I mean, that is such a good question. And there's people here who are like, are you kidding me? Because now, like, I don't know, like November especially is, that's when like the days get really short. It gets dark at 3 o'clock. I mean, I'm in Stockholm up north. It's like dark a lot more than that. Um, and people are like, it's raining and it's cold. I'm like, I feel like I'm in a detective novel. So I still, after all these years, have a little bit of that magic thing there. But um, you know what I think it is? I don't know. I like the lifestyle here. I like I like the coffee. The coffee's really good. Um, I just felt like it was calmer, even though Stockholm. So I feel like I have traveled around a bit in Scandinavia, but I feel like Stockholm is my great love, and I just like the lifestyle here. I mean, it's just okay. It's a big city, and for people in other parts of Sweden, they're like, "Oh, Stockholm, that's such a crazy city." But for me, having lived, right by New York all my life and lived there, I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" It's so the pace is different. Like it's just calmer, and like for instance, like you go to London or Paris or New York, there's like the subway system. There's like 10, 15 different lines. There's like 50 stops on each line. It's just you don't know where you're going. In Sweden, there's the red line and the green line. That's it. Then there's the blue line, but nobody takes that. And it's just, and also like, maybe because they have the socialist roots in this country, not to get too much into politics, but like, for instance, Friday at 3 o'clock in Stockholm, like nobody's working, like everyone's gone. Do you know what I mean? And they get a lot of vacation. I mean, just compared to how it is in America. And there's just also, so now I have to talk about fika. So fika, it's kind of like a coffee break, but it's more than that. It's part of Swedish culture. And it's basically like, when I think of a coffee break in the US, it's kind of like, okay, I have 20 minutes. Let's meet at Starbucks. Okay, let's go. Oh, sorry, I got to go. But fika is more like, you sit down. Fika is usually at least an hour, and you sit and you talk and you drink coffee. Maybe you have an incredible pastry. I don't know. Like I like that fika culture. There's a real cafe culture here. Stockholm's got the best cafes. So in terms of money, it's very interesting because some things here are definitely more expensive than in the US, but some things are a lot cheaper. Like one of the big things for this lifestyle is phones, as I'm sure you guys know. So for instance, I have a phone here, and so I fill it up. When I'm here, I can fill it up like month by month. So my 3 months here, I fill it up 3 times. It cost me $15. I've got unlimited calls, unlimited texts, and I've got like 5 gigabytes. $15. And it's like, and in New Jersey, I pay 60. So, and another thing in Sweden is there's something called the Dagens lunch. It's like the daily lunch. So most restaurants have it. It is like the best deal in town. It's usually like $12, $13, and you get a salad bar. You get lunch, which is like, they have amazing fish here. It's like a piece of fish that you would spend like 25, $30 in a nice restaurant in New York or New Jersey even. Here it's just like, yeah, right. It's just lunch. And then you get coffee, all for that amount. So I read this in a guidebook about Sweden. It's basically like spend your money at lunch. Dinner in Sweden is quite expensive. So I basically have like, I also have coffee in my room where I stay. This is where I am now. I stay at a long-term hotel, it's a nice little place. And also the transit is pretty cheap. When I come here, I get my 3-month card, and it's really good. Like you can travel really far, not just in Stockholm, but you can take the bus and you can take boats. So, I mean, it's definitely been hit or miss. There's definitely been some things I've been like, oh, that's really expensive. I'm not doing that again. For example, like gum picks, for cleaning your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
the floss, right?
You don't have to show you. Okay. So for instance, in America, those, like I use like 8 of those a day. Like I need it for my dental situation. And in America, you can get like a box of like 100, 150 for like maybe $4 or $5. Here it costs like 12. So at first I was like, went to a drugstore. I was like, are you kidding me? So I load up on those. You know what I mean? This time, like I would say like a fourth of my suitcase was like this little thing. But it's worth it. Like if you think about it, I probably saved like, I don't know. I probably saved like $50 a month just from
that.
that.
The Swedish government didn't pull you aside. Are you smuggling in
Like, do you try to sell them? Do you have like a side hustle?
That's her. I recognize her. She's the one with the nice teeth. So I hope that answers your question. Basically, like it's like hit or miss. Some things you can't get around, they're expensive. But other things, like honestly, Scandinavian Airlines, I'm a big fan of theirs. They have amazing deals. Mm-hmm. Like I just got some crazy ticket if you buy in advance, like $400 round trip. I'm like, what? So I figure like the things I'm saving on make up for the things maybe spending more on.
I definitely understand what you're saying because I lived in Japan for a while, and as you know, Japan is expensive. So I would, for lunch, I would get the fresh fish too. It came with a miso soup and rice and vegetables and all this stuff, and it was less than $10. And I was good for a while. So I would be able to navigate different places to eat, make sure I ate less than $10. And once in a while I'd splurge on something really nice, you know what I mean? But there are ways around it to help balance out how expensive it is. Obviously, it depends on your lifestyle, the things that you're interested in, and what you're willing to do and not willing to do. Everybody's different. But there are ways around, expensive places. So I totally get it.
Yeah, and another thing, taxis. I know that in some countries, taxis are super, super cheap. Like they're not in Sweden. So things like, to go from the airport to downtown Stockholm, I take the bus. They have the flygbussarna. They're these, they come like every 10 minutes and they cost like $10. But if you take a taxi, it costs $60. So I'm just take taxis in like emergencies or just if it's like super late at night or something. So that's a tip I have. Again, depending on the country, but that's another way I save.
You're not in a rush. You know what I mean?
Europe honestly is one of the easiest places to just get around. That Flixbus goes everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're really inexpensive if you buy the ticket in advance. If you're a student, you even get more discounts. But one thing I noticed about Europe, right? Because you're an older traveler, just like I am, right? These kids get really good discounts, don't they? In Europe,
what's my student pass?
It's like if you're under 30 or under 35, you get like these discounts. And I'm like, well, I missed that boat.
I know. It's like I'm a student of life. Does that count? Yeah. So you just everything. Yeah. So it just, I don't know. I somehow make it work, and I keep a budget. But like you said, but I splurge sometimes. You have to. Things come up and you're just like, yeah, let's do it. Like a theater ticket or just, yeah. So but again, to include that in your budgeting seems to work for me.
So let me ask, okay. Do you mind?
No, go for it.
So let me ask you. You had mentioned that you were taking care of your mom, right? And after your mom passed, you decided to spend more time abroad.
Right.
Do you think if matters were different, if mom was still here and everything else, would you still be doing the same thing? And the reason why I ask is because I hear, or we hear, a lot of people say, I want to do it, but I have aging parents. Or I want to do it, but my family, my job, there's all these reasons. Was that one of your reasons for not taking the leap earlier? Do you think that would have kept you back in the States longer?
That is such a good question. You're right. For the older travelers, that's the thing. Because, once you hit in your 50s, suddenly everyone's got an old parent. If my mom was still alive, I wouldn't be here right now. I mean, I would definitely, because my mom still lived in her own house, but she was fragile, and we had great help. In fact, the woman that helped take care of my mom is my best friend. Her name is Sarah, and she's wonderful. But I couldn't just leave my mom, And what happened was when I first moved in, my mom was 87, but she was a very spry 87. She was very amazing. And at first, my trips were like 6 weeks. Like I went to Sweden 3 times a year, 6 weeks at a time, and it was great. I loved it. And but then I started noticing my mom was just getting more fragile, and so then I cut my trips back to like a month. And then it happened like she had an operation that came up, and I had a whole trip plan and everything. I just had to cancel it, because I was her main caretaker. And even though we had great help, people have their own families, and we couldn't, you know what I mean? It was like, and so sometimes my mom would say, I feel so guilty. I know you want to live in Sweden. I was like, oh, Mom. But you know what? Sometimes it really is just you. Like, I just could not leave my mom alone. Like, I was it. You know what I mean? And sometimes I felt really constrained by that. But then I was just like, this is what life has handed me. Like, sometimes you can't hand your life off to someone else. You know what I mean? And sometimes I would look around and be like, where is the responsible adult who's going to take care of my mom? And it's like, it's you. And she didn't have the world's biggest house, but she had a house, and she had different people in her life that needed to be taken care of. It was a lot. And that's what it was. And so, yeah, I would have started sooner if she had died sooner. And if she was still alive, I would still be there now. Probably just maybe coming 3 times a year or 4 times a year for short visits. Because there was a lot to organize when I went away. I would have these big things on the wall, these big schedules. And then a few times I did hire someone, and then I'd find out a few days into my trip, like, oh, your mom fired her. You know what I mean? My mom she was sassy.
Yeah, I
and
like
she would
that.
do things like, I moved her downstairs so it would be easier. And literally, after I left, she called up some moving company. She had them move her bed upstairs. I mean, she was she
I'm gonna
was.
take matters in my
And
own
I'd
hands.
turn
I'm waiting
back
for
and
y'all.
I'd be like, "Isn't your bedroom downstairs now?" She's like, "No, I didn't like it." I'm like, "Oh, Mom," So she,
Your mom
so
sounds
yeah,
amazing.
so it's a thing. Yeah, oh, she was the best. She was cool. So I mean, sometimes it works out differently. You have tons of siblings you can divide things with, or sometimes parents do want to go into a home. Actually, no, you know what? Honestly, I think what would have happened if ended up was getting too much for me and her, and then she died. So that's something that goes in. I mean, you just have to evaluate your life, and then I don't know.
Yeah, I
Some
mean,
things are more important.
yeah, I mean, those are the stark realities, and there is that level of responsibility that you can't really shy away from. But there are certain instances where sometimes people might lean a little too much as a form of escape, or not dealing with their own whatever things are going on with their lives, and kind of using a lot of things as an excuse to not move forward. And so it's really being honest with yourself, yes, this is a stark reality, but yes, I really want to make XYZ come true, and let me plan that out, and let's see what that looks like, and having a healthy distance between you and that situation. And so, it's something that everybody deals with. Not everybody, but most people deal with. I came back to the States because, you know, I had my son and he was going through a lot of things. And so, you know, no one else is gonna, like you said, you can't hand over your life to someone else, and that's a reality of the situation, and you just got to make it work and work and deal with that. So I totally understand that, and I can relate to a certain degree. Florence, you still with us?
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
The video disappeared.
I was letting it sink in. No, that's true. And one thing, though, I can say, I think maybe in my case, it might be a little different because I had like one country that I really wanted to be focused on and wanted to create a life in. So even if you're in a situation like I am, you can still do things to keep your dream alive. Like, for instance, I study Swedish every day. And I felt like I was making some little thing towards my future that way. And I watched Swedish movies, as you know, detective novels, and I started listening to podcasts, and I had Swedish friends that I wrote to. And another thing I did that was always helpful was to make my reservations. And of course, same thing when my mom especially got older and more fragile, all my trips had a little asterisk next to them, like, this may not happen. I got the insurance. But there was something about making that commitment to myself. Even if I did have to maybe change it, it's like, no, I do intend to do this. This is important to me. I want my life to be more there than here. So I feel like there are things you can do to make your dream come alive, even if it's like going to Barnes and Noble and looking at travel journals, because the day will come when your life does change. You know what I mean? One way or another.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I always say to people, you create your own reality, right? Just because it doesn't look the way you anticipate it to look, it can still be a reality if you just make a way, right? It's kind of like one of those things where, what's that saying, that if you want to do it, you'll find a way. And so I like the fact that you would put and implement little pieces of what it is that you wanted to do into your life, so that you didn't just completely be like, oh, well, I guess this is not going to happen, you know, because time does not wait for anyone. You know,
no, it doesn't.
And it's sad that a lot of people just push stuff to the side. Like, I'll just wait till my kids to get older. I'll just wait to, you know, blah blah blah, whatever it is. And sometimes that never comes.
Right, that's true. That is really true. And I think that's kind of the hidden gift of traveling a lot when you're younger, because it just seems possible. Like, you just always did it. You know, it's not like we went on like 10 vacations a year, but, you know, I see that with my niece and nephew. They traveled a lot too, and now they're very like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, I'm going to Israel. I'm going here. You know what I mean? It's very possible for them. But someone who maybe, it takes a certain amount of confidence, you know, or just and fears to be confronted, because yeah, you're leaving what's safe and familiar, but you're opening up to so much more. And you're right. Sometimes that fear can stop people. So yeah, that. Yeah, that hasn't been my problem. Although, you know, I must say, before I went to Sweden the first time, I hadn't been to Europe since, like, I don't know, it'd been about 12 years. And I remember I suddenly felt scared, and it really surprised me. But I realized, like, I was older. Like, when I was young, I never thought about, what if I get sick? What if I fall on the ice? And I called a friend of mine, Laurel, she's a really good traveler. And I said to her, I was like, you know, I'm scared. This is the first time I'm traveling like alone to Europe as a middle-aged woman. I remember she was like, you know what, I understand you're scared, but just go. Just go. You'll see. And I was like, okay. So that's good. If you have a friend, like a traveling friend, or even like what you guys are doing now or something online, it's like, yeah, you're not going to be able to predict everything, but just, if you can, book your ticket, get your money together, and go.
Yeah, do it scared. Do it scared.
Yeah, do it scared. I like that. Yeah. And then I wasn't. Then I was here, and I was like, oh, this was, you know.
I'm like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So you're a creative. You've created multiple novels. Now, did you write majority of your novels on your travels? Like, was that your inspiration? Did you feel like you needed to be in Sweden in order to write, you know, like a Swedish novel? Like, do you feel like you would have had the same kind of creative impact had you stayed in Hoboken? Was it?
Or Colorado.
Or anywhere else?
That is a good question. You know, my first 2 trips to Sweden were originally to do the research. And then when I was getting ready to start the book, I felt like I would just like to be in Sweden. Like, because my book the Grand Man takes place in Stockholm in January, February. That's when I did my research. I thought, well, it'd be nice to like be here when I, start the book, because it's like living research. It's like, what's it like when it's 10 below or whatever. But again, I knew I couldn't stay here all the time. I still can't stay here all the time. I don't have residency. So I just do my best. I just feel like I don't need to be in Sweden to write about Sweden. I sort of have like Sweden in my heart when I go back to America. But it does help. But I'm a big note taker, and of course it's great online. Like if I can't remember what a certain street looks like, I just Google it. But I have found Sweden to be a real inspiration. I don't know. I keep getting new ideas from it. So, and now recently I've been writing horror stories set in Sweden. So that's been fun. But I think maybe I think one of the real challenges about trying to do creative work when you have this lifestyle is kind of like figuring out what you need to get it done. Like I don't know what it's like to be a painter. That's more physical. You have to have certain things, but for writing, it's kind of like, if you need to be in a quieter place in the morning, you got to make sure your hotel is not on the main drag. Like, what do you need? Like, if you need to have your coffee and you wake up at 6 and nothing's open, you got to make sure you have get something the night before, have the little powdered kind or something like that. I like the expression being jealous of your time. I mean, you have to do that even with a creative project, even if you're like live in one place, but particularly when you're traveling, like if I have a plane that leaves at I like to write in the morning. So if I have a plane that leaves at 11, I'll get to the airport earlier and get my business done so then I can sit in a cafe for 2 hours. So that has actually been one of the challenges more because especially when you move around, setting that place where you can do your work.
So I love that. I'm curious, do you have any writing rituals? Because I know, and I'm probably going to mess this up because I can't remember the names. I know one famous writer used to write naked. I want to say Maya Angelou. I think it's Maya Angelou. She used to go to hotels and write. Do you have any rituals that you do as a writer to kind of really get going?
I like to write in the morning. I like to wake up early if I've gotten enough sleep the night before. And coffee. There's something about coffee itself that wakes me up, but something about the act of making coffee in the morning is just, it's basically like now we are getting ready to write. Do you know what I mean? So I also like to write in bed. I don't like to write at a desk. So I have my lap desk here. It's under my bed right now. And I like to have quiet. I turn my phone off. I've told all my friends, and they know, I'm not, the ringer's not on. If there's an emergency, send me a text and be like, okay, you actually have to call me. Because I would check my text, I take a 10-minute break between, doing different writings. And so I'll check. And if there's some kind of emergency, but that's important too, to let other people know this is my happy space. This is my sacred writing space. So if you need to jump in, do, but otherwise I'm not going to be answering the phone. And also not to get distracted with I leave my phone on my desk, not to be checking Instagram or whatever. So, and even when I'm writing, if I'm working on my laptop, I don't have Facebook up as one of my tabs. So things like that. So part of it's what I do, but it's also what I don't do.
Okay, makes
sense.
So you're not writing naked though, so that's not.
I'm not writing naked. I'm dressed, for the most I'm dressed. But I'm in my pajamas because I don't like it to feel like work. So maybe I should try that. I don't know, but yeah, that would be a distraction. So yeah.
She said that would be a distraction. Especially with the negative 10 degrees out there. I mean.
Well, okay. Let's get back to that real quick. So Florence, now that you're living a location-independent lifestyle, is there anything that you still haven't done that you want to do?
Wow. I was very, very curious about living in the north, in the way north, north of Sweden and then in Svalbard. But after spending 3 months in Sweden during the dark season when it was dark, I was like, okay, I've done that. I'm not Not doing that again. You know, what I really want to do is get residency in Sweden. Like I feel like, and maybe this happens to you guys or some of your listeners too, finally, or not finally, maybe it might happen. There's a place and you're like, no, I really do want to stay there. So then things get very different. You start thinking of the country in a different way. And so language is really important. I mean, I like Swedish. I love Swedish. It's a beautiful language. I spend a lot of time on that. And then, no, I feel like at this point, you know, I've traveled a lot from 2013 till now. I traveled a lot, you know, and I went to Iceland and I went to Finland and I went to Norway. I went to Svalbard. I went to the Faroe Islands, a little bit in Europe. Those were the countries I wanted to see. Those are the countries that were in all my detective novels and movies. And so I feel like I did that and I saw a lot, and it always comes back to Stockholm. So that is what I would like to do. I would like to move here. So I go back to America and I work on my language. I work on my, I keep Sweden alive. I try to write book reviews now, in Bookstagram reviews in Swedish now, to keep that going.
Well, now
yeah,
so I think find you a Swedish spoo.
I know.
So you can get married in your residency.
I know, right?
That's all. Is that simple?
I
mean,
anything's possible.
Or I don't know.
I know
or
they
like
have Tinder in Sweden and in Stockholm.
They do, and everyone uses it. Or maybe I'm just keep working on my language things and starting to write things in Swedish, and even, on Instagram. I mean, I love this like self-publishing thing. It's not just books. It's like, you're self-publishing on Instagram. It's like, who knows? You know what I mean? That might be the way that I end up staying here with some kind of job or something. So, yeah. And I mean, I do still like to travel a lot, but I feel it really was my goal to go to the places where I had read detective novels that were set there or seen films set there. And I actually went to a lot of those places. So I have a feeling of satisfaction, like, oh, I did that. So, yeah.
That's awesome. No regrets?
No regrets. No, not at all. That's it. So.
Beautiful.
Well, Florence, thank you.
This is a pleasure.
Oh my gosh. This was fun.
This was a lot of fun.
This is fun. Oh, thank you guys. It's interesting. It was interesting to hear about your stories too. And I'm glad you're doing this, because it's like, I mean, I remember when I was looking up online, I saw digital nomad. I was like, that's not quite what I am. But when I found the term in location independent, I mean, it's just great to have resources for people that are trying to live a different kind of lifestyle. And you guys are doing that. And so I'm glad I found you. So through my friend Eric. Thank you, Eric.
Well, we appreciate it. But before we wrap up, we have this thing that we like to do, right? It's like a lightning round.
Hot seat.
It's like the hot seat. We're going to hit you off with a couple of questions, and you just give us a quick answer.
Whatever, first thing that comes to mind, kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do it. Yep.
Coffee, tea, or smoothies?
Coffee.
Airbnb, hostel, or hotel?
Hotel.
Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Breakfast.
Group or solo travel?
Solo.
Okay. Okay, you got that good. All right. All right, let's one last one, and this is just off the top of my head. If you had to put your life into a song title, what would that song title be?
Oh, wow.
I don't even know that myself. Oh my goodness.
Okay. Well, I like this song anyway. My favorite things.
My favorite things?
These are a few of my favorite things. Oh, does it have to be a real song or a song I
you can
make
make
up?
a song. It's just what do you think the title of your life would look like in a song?
Oh, in a song like
It sounds like a Swedish love affair.
right. I love Sweden. Oh, it is actually an Alva song, right? Take a chance on me. Da, 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 da. But like, take a chance. Like, yeah, give it a shot. You know?
Great. I like that. What would
Yeah.
yours be?
Oh man, I'm a wanderer. Maybe because I haven't settled down yet.
Predictable.
I still am looking for that home, that makes me just like so warm and fuzzy inside.
You know what? The first one that comes to my mind. So Rihanna has a song called "Ain't None of This Promised," and I think that's the first one
Wow.
that comes to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of us
Nice.
should look at our lives that way. Like, what would be
That's a cool question.
the
Look at
title
you.
of our...
Sometimes she does good things.
Yeah. Uh,
Well, Florence, again, thank you so much for spending time with us. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this is a pleasure. So I
It
think
was-
your life is so neat. I love it. You just
oh,
kind of
thank
like
you.
going with it and being so open, and I love it.
Oh, well, thank you guys and good luck. I look forward to following you guys on Instagram and Facebook and everything. So I really admire what you do personally and together. It's
Thank
great.
you very much. Where can our audience find you?
Okay, so I am on Facebook as Florence Wetzel. There are a few other Florence Wetzels, but I'm the only one who has a picture of Pippi Longstocking. Okay, so
Okay. Miss Pippi. Pippi?
Hey, hey,
the Swedish girl, the strongest girl in the world. And I'm on Instagram as Florence Wetzel, one word, 108.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
And we'll make sure we have your links online for your
Your book
books
and everything
and
else.
for your social media. So
Great, thank
that
you.
way
That's
people
great.
can check out your novel.
Yeah.
7. Geesh.
That's a lot.
That's a
awesome.
lot.
If you like thrillers,
Are you going to be the next Stephen King, like in female form?
oh, that'd be fun. That'd be great. Who knows? Who knows?
That would
So
be kind
we'll
of cool.
see.
And we could be like, we know her.
I know. She was on the
She was
show.
on the show. You know, I always had this. Okay, this is for me. I've
Okay.
always had this fixation. No lie. When it comes down to horror films and horror novels, I always think to myself, what the hell goes on in the writer's head?
Especially Crime
To
and
come-
Punishment. That
Right,
was one
to
of the
come
books I
up
read.
with some of these things, right? I'm like, whoa.
I like
So-
thriller novels. I don't know if I can watch them, but
What mindset do you need? Is this like a huge imaginary like mindset you have to be in? Like, what's the mindset to write horror?
You know what? I've seen two horror writers give talks. One of them was John Ajvide Lindqvist. He's the one that wrote Let the Right One In. He's like the Swedish Stephen King. He's my idol. But both of them said something so interesting. They're like, think about a normal situation in your life and just be like, what if? You know, what if my French press was actually evil? I mean, what if, like,
and it started attacking me.
I read this whole great book of Swedish short stories. There's like an evil vacuum cleaner. There's an evil washing machine. And I was like, yeah, but what do I like? What's important to me? I was like, yeah, what about my French press, you know? Or more seriously, I had like a little, it wasn't skin cancer, but it was like a dark thing that I had to get like burnt off. And I was like, and it went away. And I was like, yeah, what if it didn't go away? What if it was like some creature from outer space that was like, I mean, so it's like the what if. And actually, I don't know about anyone else, but I actually laugh a lot because it's so absurd. You're just like, so I think it all comes from that what if. And sometimes that what if is scary, but a lot of times, honestly, I laugh a lot because I'm just like, this is so absurd. So it's fun. It's really fun.
That
I
helped
think
me
Florence
out.
has a sixth sense of humor, I think. Secretly.
I think that helped me though.
Okay.
The what if. I never thought of
what
it like that.
if?
I always just thought, and please don't take this the wrong way. I would think that some writers were just dark, right? Because I'm just like, whoa, that's some dark shit.
Sick shit. It works.
Yeah, someone was even telling me last night, there's like high fantasy and there's like dark fantasy. Same with like, I mean, with thrillers or scary, there's like splatter and stuff. I'm not into that. I'm more into like the what ify stuff. But yeah, like what if you landed in Thailand, or you just left Thailand and you opened up your suitcase and there was like a little person in there, or there was a statue you bought that came alive. What if? You know what I mean? That's,
Imagination. Love it.
I
Yeah,
love
that's
it.
it.
Thank you so much again. Oh my God, that was so great.